I'm just gonna say one thing. Holy dude. I'm not used to the Democratic Party being competent and making right decisions, but that's what it feels like when they actually do. I mean, this is like every single thing that I said would be the best possible scenario, and they followed through on it. One thing I have to mention here. Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, is the VP pick for the Kamala Harris presidential run. Now, I am obviously very excited about this because it just feels weird. It feels weird when you're like making not only predictions that come true, but also the Democratic Party is like listening to the things that you're saying. You know what I mean? But yeah, I woke up, actual banger pick. Good news. I glazed up Tim Walz a little bit on my Instagram, posted one of my older videos on him and the Democratic Farmer Labor, whatever the party in Minnesota, which I think is a sick name for a party. They're not just like the Democratic Party. They got labor in the name. They got farmer in the name. You already know what it is. Posted another sick photo with this man. I'm glazing him a little bit too hard. I know I'm glazing him a little bit too hard. I know it's just like, if your boss looks like this, you don't need to worry about AI taking your job. He's a football coach who ice fishes and protects women's rights to choose, and trans people too. Like he's solid as hell. He's so solid, it freaks me out. Like, it just like freaks me out that the Democrats actually went with the smart choice and not like the scared pick. They're pulling the socialists as a house on Walz too. Oh, hell yeah, dude. Oh, hell yeah. They got nothing. They got nothing. First of all, he's not a socialist, bro. Shut the up. He's the governor of Minnesota. Like, you can't say stuff like that. These guys are so brain broken. Oh my God, everything is falling in line, dude. All the cards are in place. Virtually every single thing. That's how you know they're failing big time. If you want to know, the Democrats are doing so well because the Republican messaging on this front have been so bad. It's so bad. They're talking about how he like taught in China for a year and knows how to speak Mandarin. It's like they're gonna be calling him a Chinese spy. They're gonna say he's the Manchurian candidate and you know, they're really just going to push away what remains of like the rest of the normal people living in the fucking Rust Belt. It's great. Everything so far has been going according to plan. You know what I mean? Democrats should get excited at the fact that they've accidentally lucked into like a good situation. They just like they man, what a turnaround. I know. In what appears to be just a month-long sequence of W's from the Democratic Party, just doing basic competence, doing basic decency and competence, and not like objectively trying to gaslight the entirety of the country on that they can literally, physically, visibly see. Instead of doing that, they were like, hey, how about we act like a party that wants to win a election? What if we were to say, hey, this guy that was at the top of the ticket, this current Democratic leader is too old. Everyone can kind of see it. Maybe we should swap him out for a younger, more vibrant, more dynamic candidate that isn't like dying. And there was resistance to it. And yet Nancy Pelosi pulled through. Nancy Pelosi this month, in the entire month. Nancy Pelosi, you have officially reached GOAT status in my eyes. Nancy Pelosi unlocked Ultra Instinct in the same way that LeBron does when they like when like a green player disrespects him. You know what I mean? Like tries to dunk on him or something, and then LeBron goes on a 30-point tear. Like that's literally Nancy Pelosi this past month. It happens sometimes where like somebody will try to like dunk on LeBron or something, and then he gets like really pissed off. She was like, what are we doing here? Yeah, this is the moment. This is something that it's so funny that Walz is the pick because progressives, even leftists, have been writing for the Minnesota Democrats for quite some time. Like I myself have offered some coverage on that like way back in the day. As soon as there was a one-person majority, like one-seat majority in Minnesota, they went to town. They went nutty with it. They were like, oh yeah, no more hungry children actually. Sorry, sucks to suck. Yeah, we're going to do paid family leave. We're going to do all these things like no more captive meetings that are obviously anti-labor. Like all this stuff, they just went boom, 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 boom. They put those numbers on the board. They went crazy with it. And honestly, it was great. This is why like Walz, for a lot of people, Walz might be out of nowhere. You know, they're like, who the fuck is this guy? He just seems like an old man. Ironically enough, he's like around the same age as Kamala Harris, even though he looks much, much older. Who's this like folksy guy? No, he's been doing the thing. I've said it before. I've talked about how like this is exactly like the Minnesota Democratic Party is like exactly what the Democratic Party is supposed to be like, is exactly supposed to operate like this. And, you know, they're doing it. And the Republicans literally don't know. They don't know what to do. They have no way of dealing with this. They just have no way of dealing with it. They don't know. The Republicans are in panic mode. Okay. He's a football coach. He was a teacher. He was a veteran. He literally sat on a bunch of committees, including I think like the Veteran Affairs Committee, and also on top of that, even in all the way back in like 2007, I believe, like he literally was way back in the day. He was already like anti-Iraq war as well. He's got interesting takes, progressive favor with mainstream views on Israel, Iran. Yeah. Like he's definitely gonna be a hawk. He's definitely gonna be a hawk on like Iran and Israel and like that, which is obvious. Like, you know, don't be crazy. But he's had like some unique takes in terms of he's had some unique and very interesting takes in terms of like escalating against Syria and like that. He's an interesting guy. Like I think that overall he is a really, really solid pick. I asked this question to Sam Cedars and got jumped on. My question is, what has changed? Why is everyone so hyped about Waltz? How would this address our foreign policy concerns? You will get jumped on because this is a moment where like people are finally tuning back into politics, and a lot of people are just straight ticket liberals in general, and they don't personally give a single fuck about American foreign policy. That is by design, mind you. The American foreign policy is brutal, it's ruthless, it's bloodthirsty, it's maniacal, and that is precisely the reason why it is not in the forefront of American minds ever. As far as foreign policy goes, do I think Walz is going to be like all that different from the average Democrat? Probably not. But as it stands, I was a big time Bernie advocate, as you guys know, and I literally also said the same shit about Bernie in terms of foreign policy. And I said this time and time again, Bernie Sanders had like a bunch of differences, a bunch of moments where he differentiated from the average Democrat, especially on Israel. But like ultimately, it's not like he's going to be he was ever going to be like the true anti-war vanguardist leader that you think he was going to be. He was not. You have to grade on a curve. You have to manage your expectations. You don't have to care about American elections, but if you do care about American elections, you have to understand that there's obviously like American elections are going to be spoken about within the confines of America. And Americans are very selfish. They don't really give a shit about our foreign policy. It is not something that moves the needle. Having said that, in terms of Israel, it does move the needle a little bit in key districts, in key states like Michigan, for example. But yeah, Waltz has a really interesting background on foreign policy from his time living in China, where he was a teacher in China, and also has talked about not having an adversarial relationship with China, which is like genuinely weird to hear from a Democrat. So there is definitely some good there. Okay, he speaks a little bit of Mandarin. He was anti-intervention in Syria. He has been at times anti-interventionist. He's been at times a party loyalist that voted along the party lines. So that is important to understand, though. That is important to put within the context of like the rest of the Democratic Party. In terms of his stuff with respect to Muslim populations, he has a big Somali constituency in his state. He has actively defended them on the record time and time again. That's why they're attacking him and saying he's like beholden to CARE. He's not going to be aggressive in being like anti-Israel or anything like that. Make no mistake. But having said that, we'll see. I am not going to make any predictions on that front. Do I suspect him of being like above and beyond on the issue of Israel? Who knows? Probably not. He is just like every other Democrat and on that issue.
He's the chairman of the Democratic Governors Association. I can tell you his fellow Democratic governors love him, love him. They think he's smart. They think he builds consensus. They think he's really funny. And so they like being in his company. And that matters in a campaign. In terms of Harris being out, are you confident that do you have the loyalty and do you trust your partner out there on the campaign trail? Does that person at tense moments, and there will be a lot of tense moments in the next 90 days of this campaign, make you laugh and make you smile and maybe take some of the pressure off you? Can you do the small market television? Walz fits that bill. Now,
yes, Walz can do retail much better than Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris still has that like elitist California stink on her a little bit when she's running around. She plays well to younger voters for sure, but like ultimately, you put this man in the Rust Belt, he's gonna thrive. That's where he's from. That's what he does. That's his shit. He's a goddamn teacher from Minnesota. He's got like a lovable older coach energy because that is what he is. He's got a decent amount of time in the legislative body. He has performed and outperformed the Democratic Party routinely as the governor. He's a popular governor. He's done a lot. His legislative accomplishments in 2023 onward is pretty solid as well. He is 100p a phenomenal pick, a great pick. Okay, top of the leaderboard pick. Absolutely stoked for this. The Democrats have obviously set us up for low expectations time and time again. Up until the last moment, I straight up thought that they would still go with Shapiro, because Shapiro was the scared pick. Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, was the scared pick. Okay. That was the pick you do when you're not confident in your abilities of running and winning PA on your own. And honestly, I genuinely thought like it's still gonna be a bad pick. It's still gonna be a bad pick. It's not gonna be a good pick. Ultimately, they went with the good pick. I do think that they are responding positively to what they are hearing and what they are seeing from the progressive wing of the base of support in the Democratic Party. I do think that. Now, obviously, this presents an opportunity. Keep pushing on this front, specifically on Israel. Okay? Waltz is the one that sent the National Guard in during the George Floyd protest and has been making it harder to persecute cops and implements reforms in Minneapolis. Yeah, that's actually a really interesting take because it's a big column A, column B on that front as well, because he does have some weaknesses. You just mentioned two solid ones, but he's also the same guy that, if I'm not mistaken, allowed the Keith Harrison prosecution to occur. Keith Ellison, not Harrison. Sorry. He's the one who at least didn't get in the way of Keith Ellison, not Harrison. I apologize. I think that in and of itself is like pretty solid. Yeah. He also lamented on his abject failure of riot response. Somber Minnesota Governor Tim Walz confronted criticism after a third night of destructive protests in response to George Floyd's death in police custody. National Guard officers said the mission lacked clarity. Like I said, he's an interesting guy even on this front as well. But of course, no politician is perfect, and Waltz is not perfect either. Power doesn't come from above, it comes from below. Waltz and Harris will be easier to organize under than Trump, but of course, they're still going to send in cops to beat the shit out of us anyway. Yes, exactly. Fun fact, Tim Walz is on the only person on either ticket that doesn't wear makeup. He's also the only person, aside from Donald Trump, since the Carter administration that doesn't have a law degree, I'm pretty sure, of some sort. Or is it like a VP that hasn't had that, which is pretty wild. I mean, the motherfucker's a teacher, bro. He's a teacher. What are we talking about? That's it. He's a teacher. He's a football coach. He was in the army. He's pretty solid. I don't really give a shit about like him being a veteran. I do care a lot more about him being a teacher. Just like with Ketanji Brown Jackson, I cared that she was a public defender. Like, these are very important things. Life experience, especially in more formative years, that truly changes the way you view the world. If you're not a like out of touch, rich weirdo, like half of the Republican Party, for example, that's cool. That's a good thing. That means that you are going to be the kind of guy that legitimately would advocate for certain positions because you have lived experience on those positions.
Sometimes life is as much about the lessons you learn as the lessons you teach. When I grew up, community was a way of life. My high school class was 24 people. I was related to half of them. I learned to be generous towards my neighbors, compromise without compromising my values, and work for the common good. I coached football and taught social studies for 20 years. And I tried to teach my students what small-town Nebraska taught me: respect, compromise, service to country. And so when I went into government, that's what I carried with me. I worked with Republicans to
That's the thing, like, he also is like pretty popular in Congress too. Like, people love him.
pass an infrastructure bill, cut taxes for working families, signed paid leave into law. I codified abortion rights after Roe got overturned. Because I go to work for the common good. We believe in the promise of America, in those values I learned in Nebraska, and we're ready to fight for them. Because as Kamala Harris says, when we fight, we win.
We're going to get to the way that the weirdo Republicans are reacting to this. I mean, here, John Podhoretz treats boy himself. Appointing Tim Waltz, who praised Ilhan Omar, is like appointing the head of Sister Soldier's record label to run the Federal Communications Commission. And that's not like a random guy who's extremely online. That is the editor of Commentary Magazine, okay? This guy is supposed to be like a representative of the normal Republican side. They are actively bludgeoning themselves in the head. Chaya Raichik running with the Libs of TikTok account owner Chaya Raichik running with hashtag Tampon Tim. You might be wondering why hashtag Tampon Tim? Because they made a push at Capitol to fund menstrual products for students in Minnesota public schools, saying that it is pads and tampons are as essential as toilet paper and soap in school bathrooms. That's why they're calling him Tampon Tim. Bro, you're so stupid. Like, what are you saying? Like, what's wrong with you? How could this be seen as a bad thing? What's next, dude? Are you gonna yell at him for feeding children? Is that what we're doing? Yeah. Oh man, stupid Tim Walz, he wants to feed our children with free breakfast and lunch, dude. What a f***ing animal. Team Trump is already out with a brutal ad against Kamala Harris's VP Tim Walz. They're really good at this.
Signing a bill into law that requires schools to stock tampons in boys' bathrooms. Or weirder than signing legislation allowing...
Yeah, this is not gonna work, man. It's not working. You're a gross loser. You are a gross loser. This shit's not gonna work. It's not gonna work at all, man. It's not gonna work.
Now Kamala wants Walz to enforce those laws on a national scale. Tim Walz, too weird, too radical.
Too weird, too radical. Yeah, he's so weird, dog. Definitely.
I'm not going to get involved in making a choice. What I will say, though, is I've been impressed by Tim Walz's ability not only to communicate to the working people of Minnesota, but to also be an advocate for them. So I like Tim very much, and I wish him the best.
Wow, I can't believe how far left is Kamala's VP Tim Walz. Last week, Bernie Sanders specifically named him as his dream choice. I can't believe one of the most consistently popular congresspersons in the United States likes Kamala's VP pick. Surely this is a good angle of attack. It's like, that's amazing. That's amazing. They are so online, dude. Fox News has nothing on Walz.
That still matters. So let's look back at his record. Walz's first executive order as governor was to create a diversity, equity, and inclusion council. He also supported...
No, I can't believe he did that. Oh my God. I hate him.
Open borders.
You know, he talks about this wall. I always say, let me know how high it is. If it's 25 feet, then I'll invest in the 30-foot ladder factory.
And he pushed socialism.
He's saying that Walz don't do anything to curb immigration. He's right.
Don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. Just do the work.
Oh, wait, and there's more.
They're posting his dubs. They're clip chimping him the shit. You can hear the audio cutting mid-word. It doesn't matter. This is weak shit. You got nothing.
Signed an executive order protecting gender-affirming care or surgeries for minors in his state. And in 2020, he was the governor of Minnesota during the George Floyd.
Oh, they just skipped through that. Okay, got it. All right, great. Yeah, it's crazy that they were like, hey, medical decisions should be kept between a doctor and the patient. Wow, I'm so angry. Aren't you angry? No, medical decisions should famously not be kept between a patient and a medical professional who literally has all of the data and knowledge. It should be between a doctor, a patient, and me, random guy on Twitter. I should be making these decisions. Not a doctor and a patient. Why am I not in the center of these conversations? It's not between a doctor and a patient. It's me, random guy living in Staten Island. I get to make these decisions. Small government, by the way. I love small government, except for when I make the decisions about medicine.
I got a call from a friend and a dedicated public servant. Senator Torres Ray called in her district, and it was on fire. And there weren't any police there. There weren't any firefighters. There was no social control, and her constituents were locked in their house wondering what they were going to do. That is an abject failure that cannot happen. If the issue is that the state should have moved faster, yeah, that is on me.
I like that he's like openly taking ownership of his failures as what like a good, like taking accountability. Like that's insane. They're making fun of him for taking accountability. That is insanity, dude. Like that doesn't make him look bad, dumb. Folks, accountability has got, it's woke. This man is taking accountability. What a woke loser. Tim Walz, here, this is what he said about the
40,000
uncommitted vote in his own state, by the way. This is something to remember. It is pretty significant.
votes right now, 20% of the vote going to uncommitted. And we've seen that already in this primary in Michigan. What message are voters in your state trying to send to President Biden? And what do you want to see President Biden do in response?
Yeah, look, they're engaged. We're really proud in Minnesota. Civic responsibility. We have some of the highest voter turnouts. These are voters that are deeply concerned, as we all are. The situation in Gaza is intolerable. And I think trying to find a solution, a lasting two-state solution, certainly the president's move towards humanitarian aid and asking us to get to a ceasefire, that's what they're asking to be heard. And that's what they should be doing. We've gone through this before, and we know that now we make sure we've got 8 months. We start bringing these folks back in.
That's why I said he's interesting, because, like, again, big Somali population in his state. He has routinely gone out to bat to defend them, defended Ilhan Omar, and also on top of that has, like, delivered a speech to CARE, which is unheard of, okay? Like, outside of, like, specific Michigan congresspersons and, like, Rashida Tlaib and like that, you don't ever get that kind of, you don't even get that kind of lip service from the Democratic Party. That's probably why they're going to run with that's why they're running with he's a secret Muslim narrative. For those of you who don't know, CARE is the Council on American Islamic Relations, okay? Dude had a dynamite interview on Ezra Klein. Yeah, I know. I was very Walt-pilled after that interview. He was great. He does a really good job. He does a really good job of not just, like, saying that Republicans are weird, but also then basically saying, like, look, I push for progressive policies because I want to help people. I want to help people that, got me elected. And I want to make sure, like, Republicans, whether they admit it or not, doesn't matter. They also benefit from paid family leave. Republicans also benefit from feeding children at schools, right? Like school lunch programs, like free breakfast and lunch programs. That's popular. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or not. Republicans don't want that to happen, so they just hyper focus on weird stuff. And he's right. This is a great take. Exactly. Thank you for doing the obvious correct thing instead of letting a bunch of consultant freaks trick you into map math. But Pennsylvania is a critical state. Yeah, but what if you just try to win all the other ones by choosing the best possible campaigner? Yes, it's 100% true. What is this? 5 minutes and 26 seconds of Tim Walz being awesome. This is the beautiful moment that everyone will be playing in campaign ads if the Democratic Party is even remotely smart about their strategy. This is when he signed into law free breakfast and lunch programs for all school children in his state. This was an emotional moment. This is a phenomenal thing that he did. He's literally a school teacher. Like, what are we talking about, dude? Come on, man. Come on, man. That's crazy. That's beautiful. That's wholesome.
Here out at the state fair with my daughter.
Hope.
Every year we as a family.
She's named Hope because she's an IVF baby, by the way. Another solid part of the story is like the IVF part, which is what some Republicans want to ban. Oh my God.
Something new. I get to pick something, a classic, the old mill ride, to do that. And then Hope gets to pick something new.
I think we're gonna go do the slingshot.
Which I don't know what it is, and they're keeping it from me. But then we're gonna go get some food, corn dog.
I'm vegetarian.
Turkey then. And
Turkey's meat.
Not in Minnesota, turkey special. And we will go do some of those things and report back.
Oh my God.
Dude, it's like, oh God, I'm losing my mind. Dude, I'm losing my mind. It's like a gift. Like, you will not see JD Vance in a situation like this. You will never see Trump in a situation like this. You won't even see Kamala in a situation like this for the most part. This is what I've been saying when I say the Democratic lineup for talent is deep. The fact that they were stuck with Joe Biden was unimaginable to me, because there are governors like him out there. Beyond him, there's Andy Bashar is pretty solid too.
Of all her potential running mates, you might have the most progressive record as governor. I know you were more of a moderate when you were in the House, but you've legalized recreational marijuana, you passed universal background checks on guns, you expanded LGBTQ protections, you implemented tuition-free college for low-income Minnesotans. There's free breakfast and lunch for school kids. Do you think your record is an asset to the ticket, or would it risk fueling Trump's attacks as you being a big government liberal?
What a monster. Kids are eating and having full bellies so they can go learn, and women are making their own healthcare decisions. And we're a top 5 business state, and we also rank in the top 3 of happiness. Look, they're going to label whatever they're going to label.
The funniest thing is climate change will make Minnesota one of the most livable places in the United States of America. So like there's also that aspect of it as well. Wasn't it? It was literally Minnesota, right? Like it was like Minnesota, Michigan, like all of those states will literally become the most valuable states in the nation as a consequence of climate change. My mom was a public school teacher and an elector and campaigned for him when he ran for state office. She talks about how even though he had a busy schedule, he came to speak in her government classes. Yeah. Minnesotans are going to become insufferable. I mean, they deserve it. They deserve this momentum.
Well, he's going to roll it out, mispronounce names, to try and make the case. The fact of the matter is, where you see the policies that Vice President Harris was a part of making, Democratic governors across the country executed those policies, and quality of life is higher, the economies are better, all of those things. Educational attainment is better. So, yeah, my kids are going to eat here, and you're going to have a chance to go to college, and you're going to have an opportunity to live where we're working on reducing carbon emissions. Oh, and by the way, you're going to have personal incomes that are higher, and you're going to have health insurance. So if that's where they want to label me, I'm more than happy to take the label.
I mean, it's incredible. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. I'm on board. Like, this is great.
How are you going to build a water treatment plant in a town of 400 if you don't have a collective effort at it? So I have to tell you, they scream socialism. We just build roads, and we build schools, and we build prosperity into this. Their whole plan is to go backwards, to give tax cuts to the wealthy. And look, it was so surprising. These super successful Donald Trump, who inherited $400 million and then proceeded to fail at everything. Middle America, you earn it, but you know what? You're not on your own. Neighbors help neighbors. And I will, this one bothers me. I heard you talking about punching back at the bullies. They see people less fortunate as scapegoats and punchlines for their jokes. We see them as neighbors.
Bro, he lasers JD so much. He literally, oh my God. Even when he was talking to Ezra Klein, who is, again, a liberal and a bit of an elitist and one of those like bi-coastal Andes, like Ezra kept trying to talk about like how JD Vance is actually really interesting that he became like the hillbilly that has this anger and resentment. And all of that is fake. And you could see in that conversation where he's talking to Ezra Klein, where he's like, no, dog, that's just like, those are my neighbors. Like, that's not like he even managed through that conversation pretty well as well. I think. Will the standard voter care? I think so. It's entirely dependent on the hundreds of millions of dollars that they are fundraising currently and how they put that to work. The way you feel about this guy right now, from just my like regular coverage, from his media slots, like from his regular old appointments that he's doing in the media before he was picked as the VP. Think about the way you feel, and then try to think about like what a normal person, how a normal person would feel when they hear this. Do you think that like a normal person reads this as inauthentic? Or do you think a normal person would read this as like a pretty authentic, run-of-the-mill, salt-of-the-earth kind of guy who is genuinely being like, I don't know about this socialism. I care about building roads, man. What the fuck are we talking about? I care about being neighborly.
Yeah, well, first of all, it was up to him. I wouldn't have a family because of IVF and the things that we need to do reproductive. My kids were born through that that way. And also I make sure that I'm the guys and our folks are investing in prenatal care. We're the ones that are there for universal pre-K. We're the ones that are providing school meals at this. I'm not going to back down one bit on this whole family values thing, and it's us. That construct that he's putting out there is absolutely untrue. We're making it more affordable to have children by having paid family and medical leave so that you can go home when your kids are sick and take care of them. Or if you're a dad, I don't have to go right back to work 5 days later after my wife had a C-section because our insurance wouldn't pay for it. We're boosting those things up. There's nothing pro-family other than having women be incubators for their vision of this. Once again, it's weird. I don't want J.D. Vance talking about my family. I certainly don't want him talking about my daughter or my wife. It's none of his business. But I said the one thing is we need to talk about how we've invested in families. We have the most generous child tax credit, and it's what Vice President Harris is proposing for the country. People are poor because they don't have money. And when kids don't have the money on the front end, all of the things that a chain reaction of can't learn, can't go on. So I'll challenge him on that. Where is J.D. Vance's pro-family? He's forcing people to have...
He's so good with the I didn't know Minnesota went this hard. Bro, watch my old video that I did in 2023 specifically about the memes at the time were Democrats with a super majority in a blue state become Clintonites and like annoying establishment Democrats. Democrats in the Midwest with like the slimmest one seat majority are like Leninist vanguardists in the way that they legislate. They went so nutty with it. If Waltz is the VP pick, they need to get an ad out ASAP with a bunch of former students saying stuff like this. Whatever happens today or tomorrow with the Veep stakes, I'm so dang proud of Tim Waltz. I was a C-ish student in high school. Shocking, I know. Mr. Waltz took the time to make sure that I was successful, not only in his class, but others. He made learning exciting. Phones are up. We're locked and loaded.
Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
It's crazy because they like arrive on time too, which is like a subtle thing that Joe Biden never did either. God damn, dude, it's electric out here.
On behalf of myself and the first, second gentleman of the United States, my husband, Doug Emhoff, thank you for the warm welcome. So here's the thing. Since the day that I announced my candidacy, I set out to find a partner who can help build this brighter future. A leader who will help unite our nation and move us forward. A fighter for the middle class. A patriot who believes, as I do, in the extraordinary promise of America. Welcome the next Vice President of the United States, Tim Walz.
Thank you, Madam Vice President, for the trust you put in me, but maybe more so, thank you for bringing back the joy. The National Guard gave me purpose. It gave me the strength of a shared commitment to something greater than ourselves. And just as it did for my dad and millions of others, the GI Bill gave me a shot at a college education.
Dude, that's so sick. Openly writing like what is like the closest that you can get to unconditional social safety nets
and I
is
followed in their
fire.
footsteps. For nearly 20 years, I had the privilege of teaching high school social studies and coaching football, including winning that state championship. So thank you. Don't ever close the yearbook. Don't ever. But it was my students. They encouraged me to run for office. They saw in me what I was hoping to instill in them.
I believe
a
this.
commitment
I don't
of
think
common
he had
good.
any.
A belief that one person
I don't think he.
can make
I don't
a
think he
difference.
thought he was like running
So
for
in
president.
2006, I took a leap and I ran for Congress.
He's literally the opposite of Shapiro in that regard.
I'm proud of the work we did there together. I worked across the aisle on veterans issues, on agriculture, and on ways to grow rural economies. I learned the art of compromise without compromising my values. And now, as governor of the great state of Minnesota, I bring those experiences to bear in tackling the challenges that are facing our great state. Minnesota's strength comes from our values, our commitment to working together, to seeing past our differences, to always being willing to lend a helping hand. Those are the same values I learned on the family farm and tried to instill in my students. I took it to Congress and to the state capitol, and now Vice President Harris and I are running to take those very values to the White House.
Yeah, he's the complete opposite of Biden. He was a corrupt career politician. He's a normal guy who rose to the merit from the bottom.
Donald Trump sees the world a little differently than us.
I think repackaging socialism or socialist policies or social safety nets as neighborliness is so fire. I'm nutting, dude.
He doesn't have time for it because he's too busy serving himself. Trump weakens our economy to strengthen his own hand. He mocks our laws. He sows chaos and division, and that's to say nothing of his record as president. He froze in the face of the COVID crisis. He drove our economy into the ground, and make no mistake, violent crime was up under Donald Trump. That's not even counting the crimes he committed.
Oh! Got him! Oh, that's a banger! Okay, come on.
Some of us are. Some of us in here are old enough to remember. I see you down there. I see those old white guys. Some of us are old enough to remember when it was Republicans who were talking about freedom. It turns out now what they meant was the government should be free to invade your doctor's office.
Yes. Yes.
In Minnesota, we respect our neighbors and their personal choices that they make.
Patient doctor, no third party.
Even if we wouldn't make the same choice for ourselves, there's a golden rule. Mind your own business.
I'm nutting. I'm nutting again. I'm nutting again. He's making me nut. Never has a 60-year-old bald man made me nut like this.
These guys are after my heart chanting, mind your own business. That feels good, so thank you. Look, that includes IVF. And this gets personal for me and my family.
Oh, God. Oh, who's doing it?
When my wife and I decided to have children, we spent years going through infertility treatments. And I remember praying every night for a call for good news. The pit in my stomach when the phone rang, and the agony when we heard that the treatments hadn't
Oh my God, I
worked.
can't wait for the Groypers to be like, his seed was weak.
That when we welcome our daughter into the world,
They're going to be
we
even
named her
grosser
Hope.
and weirder, and then Americans are going to be even more negatively polarized.
When Vice President and I talk about freedom, we mean the freedom to make your own healthcare decisions and for our children to be free to go to school without worrying they'll be shot dead in their classrooms. By the way, as you heard, I was one of the best shots in Congress, but in Minnesota, we believe in the Second Amendment, but we also believe in common sense gun violence laws.
Oh my God!
Vice President Harris' idea of freedom is a ticket for education to be that ticket to the middle class, not crippling debt. Air that's clean, water that's pure, communities that are safe. A place where we settle our political differences not through violence, but with our votes. And that's what this election's about. What direction will this country go in? He's not going back. Well, Donald Trump would sure take us backwards. Let's be clear about that. And don't believe him when he plays dumb. He knows exactly what Project 2025 will do to restrict our freedoms. If Trump gets a chance to return, he's going to pick up exactly where he left off 4 years ago. Only this time, it will be much, much worse. Raising costs on middle-class family. He will repeal the Affordable Care Act, no doubt about it. He'll gut Social Security and Medicare. And when somebody tells you they believe him. He said he'd ban abortion across this country, and he'll do it, whether or not Congress is there or not. Donald Trump's not fighting for you or your family. He never sat at that kitchen table like the one I grew up at, wondering how we were going to pay the bills. He sat at his country club up in Mar-a-Lago, wondering how he can cut taxes for his rich friends.
Oh, nutting!
And I got to tell you, his running mate shares his dangerous and backward agenda for this country. Like all regular people I grew up with in the heartland, JD studied at Yale, had his career funded by Silicon Valley billionaires, and then wrote a bestseller trashing that community. Come on! That's not what middle America is. And I got to tell you, I can't wait to debate the guy. That is, if he's willing to get off the couch and show up. So, you see what I did there? She believes in the opportunity for every single person to join the middle class. She believes in the promise of America. We just got to fight. We just got to fight. Because as soon-to-be President Harris says, when we fight, we win. Thank you, Philadelphia. Thank you, Vice President. God bless America.
I'm just going to say one thing. Holy dude. I'm not used to the Democratic Party being competent and making right decisions, but that's what it feels like when they actually do. I mean, this is like every single thing that I said would be the best possible scenario, and they followed through on it. One thing I have to mention here, the reason why I say Kamala Harris is like, she's all right in terms of like being an orator, is because think about the difference between her and the speech that she delivered versus the way that Tim Walz was delivering his speech. The reality of the matter is he's pretty solid. He is naturally charismatic in a kind of goofy, endearing way. I think that he plays really well to the base. It's a great contrast. Kamala Harris is incredibly educated, obviously like represents one pathway in the American dream, coming from a family, being raised by a single mother, immigrant parents, and just like becoming the vice president now, running for president. Like that is really, really captivating in terms of representation. It's really captivating for a lot of people of color across the board. That is a story that a lot of people share in this country. On the other hand, you got Tim Walz also coming from a working class background, literal farmhand from Arkansas or Nebraska, becoming a teacher, serving the military. It's just, he is so authentic. He comes across very authentic, very endearing. I think that, I mean, this is a really, really this is a really solid ticket. Phenomenal. I will say this much though, and this part remains true. Like, I don't think Walz ever was like, oh yeah, I have ambitions. Like I have higher office ambitions. As a matter of fact, someone was bringing up his one-time quote about how he'd rather eat glass than go back to DC. And I think that he was basically called into action through his legislative accomplishments. Josh Shapiro, on the other hand, very ambitious. Pete Buttigieg, very ambitious. Barack Obama was also very ambitious. Barack Obama, on the other hand, was very charismatic as well and could communicate in a way that at least seemed authentic. I think Tim Walz gives off a totally different vibe, and he was basically built in a lab to dominate American politics. He's got the best biography and the best and got policy chops. A great choice. That's why I was behind him earlier when people were talking about others. Overall, Republicans are going to be ruthless. They're going to be weird. They're going to talk about how, like, I've seen liberals on Twitter saying they like Walz, but they're concerned by the fact that you also like him. If someone is like negatively polarized towards liking a candidate because I like them, they have the brain capacity of a hamster. Like that's it. That's the dumbest thing on the planet. If someone is genuinely making political calculations about like what someone they have been negatively primed into hating thinks, it's just like, you should just go outside. You should never touch a computer. Okay. You should just not touch a computer. Also, my political instincts in terms of like putting together a winning composition was so on the goddamn money. Those are the same exact dumb liberals who were like riding with Biden until the very last moment. So, you know, in terms of like putting together a successful electoral strategy, I think I'm pretty aware of what the American population is interested in. He plugged up a lot of holes that Kamala had that Republicans were going to attack. Well, the other side of this story that like a lot of people, I was actually very worried with a Shapiro pick. I was worried that Kamala Harris would probably tack to the center. It is a age-old Democratic Party instinct to tack to the center when you get attacked by the right. When they call you a radical, instead of doubling down on your proposals and being like, what do you think? You think feeding children is radical? Well, you're the radical. You're the weirdo. You know what I mean? Instead of doing that, Democrats oftentimes turn around and they hit center. They go, no, I'm not a radical. Oh my God, God forbid, don't call me a socialist. Oh my God, I'm so scared. You don't have to be a socialist. As long as you're improving the material conditions of the working class in this country, you don't have to call yourself a socialist. You don't have to say you're a socialist. That's what matters. Stick to the policies, not these like dumb labels. That's why whenever someone says, Hassan, you're so liberal, you're so libbed up, I'm like, sure, okay, who gives a shit? Or when people say, Hassan, you're a capitalist, you have a house. I'm like, yeah, I am. I love capitalism. Who gives a shit? Listen to what I'm saying. Don't try to package me into a neat little confine, neat little ideological bubble that you want to cultivate so you can like present me as a straw man that you can easily dismantle. Overall, there's still work that needs to be done. This is not like a lock. This is not an easy lock. There's a lot of momentum. Kamala Harris just doubled down on that momentum. I give the Democratic Party its roses when they do stuff like this, because I think positive influence is a good thing as well. It can't always just be chirping. It can't always be just negative. It can't always be complaints. They're already seeing that in the form of massive donations coming down. The Republicans are going to be like, these guys are radical. These guys are radical. So the Democratic Party now has to go, what exactly is radical about feeding children? I think it's radical to offer more tax breaks to the wealthy at a time when they have seen record high profits. I think it's radical to give handouts to massive corporations that rely on the welfare state to keep their employees alive. I don't think it's radical to feed the hungry. I don't think it's radical to feed children. I don't think it's radical to expand child tax credits so that people with children have an easier time raising their children. Republicans want you to think that these ideas are radical because they've grown far too complacent with their completely incomprehensible and utterly inhumane worldview. That's it. The average American, regardless of whatever kind of like weird political associations they have, the average American is totally perceptive or totally receptive to progressive economic policies. They recognize it. They're just not used to it, but they recognize that these things help them. That's why Republicans who vote against infrastructure spending will then go back to their own hometowns and at their town halls act like they brought that money home to build that bridge. Because they're real pieces of shit who recognize that the American population at the end of the day likes to fix the potholes. You know what I mean? So ultimately, the idea that like these people are terrified of radical policies, Americans are terrified of radical policies. No, the fuck they're not. It's just that the Democrats are actually scared. They're so personally invested in this narrative that like Americans actually despise progressive policy that they never want to run on it. They should. And that's why I really like Waltz, because Waltz, make no mistake, has a very progressive agenda, a progressive agenda that the Republicans will spend a whole lot of time calling socialist. And now that Kamala is locked in with him, she has to defend those positions. And to me, that's great.